pretty much everyone knows that fear is not something that's helpful. Pretty much everyone knows that being fearful is something that is going to limit you. There's a lot of secret knowledge that we can benefit from understanding. So, what I'm going to reveal to you is the 3 gateways to hell and the 3 beneficial things that all people in all walks of society can benefit from. So, the first of the gateways to hell is called desire. So, when I was young, I discovered this idea. It's quite popular. Desire is suffering. You'll see this anywhere in Buddhism or a lot of wisdom traditions. And when I came across this idea, I didn't quite understand what it meant. I had a very limited understanding of it, basically thinking, well, my desires are suffering. So the thing to understand about this that's hidden underneath the surface, the nuance of it, is that selfishness can be destructive, whereas selflessness can be liberating. And what does that mean? That means when you let go of need and want, you can be everything. So most people, they will hurt other people to get what they want. Now, obviously, if everyone was to kill someone else to get their bank account or something along those lines, we couldn't operate as a society like that. Now, that's obviously an extreme example, but you really have to be more nuanced at it. You have to look to understand this. You have to look at how it plays out in your life. Often, it leads to an emotional limitation. Let's say you want something and you can't get that. Well, you got these feelings of longing. Well, then that can become an emotional cycle. For example, relationships. Most people have a desire for meaningful relationships. And in that desire for meaningful relationships, they start to really develop a longing, and then it can lead to feelings of worthlessness. It can lead to expectations never being met because the ideal that you have, another person rarely fulfills your ideal expectations. But just by circumventing that whole thing and letting go of that whole cycle, you find a whole freedom, which actually allows you to connect better with other people, that allows you to find better relationships with other people, because there's not that interference in the way. What I'm saying is desire acts a bit like interference between you and what you're trying to create. It's not a helpful element. That's what we're trying to communicate by desire or suffering. Desire is suffering is a very minimalistic and oversimplified approach. But it's based on the idea that misdirected selfishness is not helpful to the person who participates in that cycle. The one who takes without giving is stealing. So, be mindful of your desires. Be mindful of how you're viewing this life. Be mindful of your needs. And if you truly explore some of your desires and are honest with yourself, and you're willing to get down to the bottom of those, you take the time to really think them through, you can choose which ones are helpful for you and which ones are not beneficial to you. So, be willing to explore that. Be willing to explore which desires and needs are actually helpful for you. The second gateway, fear. Now, perhaps fear was an evolutionary trait that kept us from danger, that's for sure. But even physically, that kind of flight or flight response, as it operates for most people, leads to a nervous system overload where their brain and body connection is not operating at a high level because their nervous system is in overload. So the brain cannot communicate between the brain and the cells, and then disease and accelerated aging and other conditions start to play. So I'm saying that running away, being fearful, may have had a genetic reason. Maybe it helped us through evolution is what I'm saying. However, in our society, being afraid of a potential is very rarely helpful. Fear can also be a reaction to when we just don't understand, an unskillful way of dealing with life. When we don't understand things, we're very commonly fearful. So just by understanding the true nature of things, we can let go of fear. What I'm saying with these three gateways is that any one of them can be crippling to the point of inaction, crippling to the point of your entire life can be forfeit because you just are so overcome by what's around the corner in this situation with fear that you can't even look around the corner and see, oh, maybe it's your lucky charm, let's say. So some people say fear is false evidence appearing real, and that's definitely an interesting way of looking at it. But just common fear, don't let it limit you because it can cripple you. If you're engaged in that cycle, and we all do to a certain degree, realize how it's limiting you and choose not to step through that doorway because it can just get out of hand. It can really control your whole identity and limit your life in ways that you would have never thought. The third gateway, anger. So anger is often one of the most immediate results to unfulfilled desires. In this way, the desire-anger duo is one of our most formidable barriers or blockages or obstacles in this life. Because the typical cycle looks something along these lines. We have something we want and we don't get it, or when we get it, it's not what we thought it was, or we just want more and it becomes about the actual desires, searching and longing. But there's unfulfilled desires, and then that leads to anger. Well, you've dealt with angry people. You know that they're in a confused state. They're not acting in their most intelligent ways. They're not, let's say, exceeding expectations, to put it simply. They're just jacked up, man. They're out of it. You cannot reason with an angry person. They're in a state of confusion. They're frazzled. They're foaming at the mouth. No matter what you say, you can't get through to some people because of that confusion that follows with anger. Many times you just have to wait for them to cool down so you can actually reason with them. So unfulfilled desires leads to anger. And anger leads to confusion. Now, what happens is that you get confused and you start to forget what is right and what is wrong, and you start to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over and over again. And eventually, most people, because they have so many unfulfilled desires, they're angry all the time. They're angry every day. It's become their very foundation of their personalities. It's who they are, who they think they are. They become in a very limited perspective. This anger is just right underneath the surface. Any little thing can trigger it because of all these just unfulfilled desires. And that anger has made them confused, and they just keep repeating the same mistakes because they're in that confused state. And what's going to come out of that? What's going to come out of that? Nothing good. Your entire potential, you're just forfeiting what you could do. And this is why people are so limited, because they are bound. They're in a very bounded emotional mental state where everything is filtered through these limiting perspectives. So choose not to engage in anger. It's something, when I say that, it's something that happens slowly. It's something that you work on step by step. It's not something that you don't change your personality overnight, but you start by understanding it. You start by understanding how you're participating in it and how you'd like to change. And then slowly being honest with yourself and letting go, truly letting go. Because if you let go of many of the things that you think you need, you'll find it more effective to get what you, a better version of your life. You'll be more effective, and you may have less confusion and anger and fear in your life. So those are the 3 gateways to hell. Any one of them certainly can cripple you. Any one of them can certainly destroy your life. So choose not to participate in them. Just don't even walk through those. If you feel those, a misdirected selfish greed or desire, just, you have to see the end of that cycle as destroying you, or understanding at least in ways that it doesn't help you. And then you can let go of them. Then you can just choose not to invest in those. You don't even have to reason out, I'm being angry. I know it's going to confuse me. I know that you don't have to participate in those cycles. And that helps us with also things like victim mindset, where basically that something outside of you controls your life, because you're empowered now. You're empowered to disengage with that which disempowers you, right? So let's talk about the 3 things that are beneficial, that if those are the negative elements, one of the most relevant negative elements that most people engage in, what are the positive elements that we can engage in? So the first is a theory basically called self-purification. The Sanskrit word is tapas. So this could be any secret practice. It could be something like meditation, which when you're beyond desire, fear, and anger, meditation destroys your sorrow. It literally purifies your mind and your heart. In fact, even in terms of your brain waves, when you're in an overloaded state, your brain waves are very incoherent. Your sympathetic overload is making your body very minimally. It's very minimally working in the way that it could. It's at maximum potential. So what I'm saying is that these tapas, this purification, you can use whatever purification method to melt down your mind. So here's the way it works. In yoga, we do a little bit different of approach. Okay, we try to take out the trash instead of go through the trash. Okay, and we do that through self-purification. This is one tool. This is one approach that's important to understand. So now, talking therapies can be very beneficial because we can explore ideas, we can see our limits, and things like that. Now, this approach is a little bit different. I do think that there's value, obviously, in bringing self-realization and self-awareness, because that's the goal of the talking therapy. But this activity, these tapas, what it's about, it's more about taking out the trash instead of going through the trash. Well, what does that mean? So let's just look at something like deep breathing. There's a really interesting read called Coherence. And basically, what you can do is by balancing your breath, you balance your heart rate. Okay, and when you balance your heart rate, you stabilize and normalize your brain waves. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that through breathing rhythmically and evenly, you can create more coherent and better brain waves. So let's say normally you're in a shallow breath, and this is just an example of how one aspect of a secret purification technique through the breath. By balancing and regulating your breathing, you balance and regulate your heart rate. You make it consistent, which balances your brain waves. So if you continually engage in a deep breathing exercise, especially as instructed by a competent teacher, you're continuing to reestablish yourself in that state, and eventually you get kind of stuck in that state of coherence. Okay? So simply by breathing rhythmically and evenly every day, you can condition yourself to have a more deeper understanding of life because your brain is operating at a higher function. So now that's just one example. You could take that example to a physical practice where typically people think of yoga as asana. Asana basically is the physical practice. Okay, that's one aspect of yoga. Yoga is about uniting with the highest potential in any field of life. Okay, so in terms of physical practice, we have exercise, right? Okay, pretty straightforward. Why? It detoxes the body. It cleans out the lymphatic system. It cleans the blood out of the liver. I mean, on and on and on and on. Everyone knows the benefits of exercise, right? So that's one way to physically purify yourself. So if you have a physical problem, it's one of the best ways to handle that physical problem. And the interesting thing about that is where the body moves, the mind moves. If you were to go outside right now and sprint for 60 seconds straight, you would certainly have a mental and emotional reaction to that. Maybe it would be endorphins, maybe it would be chemicals, maybe whatever. But if you change the body, you change the mind. So in terms of these three things that are beneficial to all people in all walks of society, it's self-purification, or tapas. And there's a lot to say about it. There really is. But in just terms of a superficial overview, it's engaging in a practice that just kind of takes out the trash and recasts whatever it is into a higher order. Okay? So that's tapas. So another activity that is beneficial to all people in all walks of society is charity, sometimes called dana. So why is this important? Almsgiving. Now, a lot of people think that helping other people is good for other people, but it's very similar to the concept of tapas, where you're able to overcome yourself. You're able to put other people forward and put all of your mental and emotional and limits in the background just for a second to do something good in the world. If you're putting other people first, or you're just doing your best to serve and have a devotional attitude, the ideas of anger and fear and desire and limits and pride, they're incongruent. So it becomes a self-purifying element. It becomes in something where you can't really be angry and help someone in the same time. It helps you be a more compassionate person. Now, you could obviously argue that and say you could do anything from any attitude. But I'm trying to say that there's a certain devotional approach to that you're trying to participate in. And through that emotionality, you're using it as an opportunity to let go. We all have this. Let's say there's something you don't want to do, but you push through and you do it anyways. And at the end, you're happy you did it. You didn't follow that more limited way. You chose a higher way. So there's always that bit of resistance there. So if you were to go and, expose go pick up trash or something, your ego might come up, your pride might come up, all these things may come up. And that's an opportunity for you to choose selflessness. That's an opportunity for you to choose compassion. It's an opportunity for you to choose love, which are going to eventually lead to a much happier and ultimately better world for everyone else. Because when you change yourself, you're going to change all of your future actions, and then you're going to change all your future interactions, and then your world, and make the world a better place. So charity is very beneficial because it allows you to put your drama story in the background and choose another way. You can't go into a homeless kitchen and help people and be a dick. You can't. It just won't work. And also, really, you're kind of creating a relationship and a connection with those uplifting attitudes. And you just become a fountain for it. And when you're always uplifting everything up, which is really what this is about, it becomes a much better world for yourself, because no matter what comes your way, you're always making it better. You're always giving it that Midas touch, turning it into gold. You're always lifting everything up. So charity and almsgiving, being a channel of this positive compassion, is very beneficial for you and the world. And when you engage in it, your life improves. Number 3, yagna, selfless offerings. So people give offerings all the time. And sometimes they give presents, sometimes they, there's a lot of things to offer at the altar, symbolically speaking. But really what the greatest sacrifice that a person can do is giving up their individual egos and giving up that limited, domesticated self that traps them into a prison. So these selfless offerings are very, very, very powerful, because I'm saying that you can sacrifice your very limited self. You can give up all your pride. You can give up all of your fear, all of your desire, all of your anger. So you can be something greater. And that's one of the greatest services you can do for yourself and obviously for the world, because you're involved in a network of people. You influence a lot of lives, and by uplifting yourself, your influence on them will be different as well. So this selfless offering and support is one of the greatest sacrifices that a person can give. And I'm just making a very clear point here that the greatest thing you can give up for your own benefit, the giving up for your own benefit, is your own limits. Which is funny, because by serving yourself in that highest way, you're going to enable yourself to serve other people in that highest way. So it's a truly beautiful story. I encourage you to contemplate these 3 gateways to hell: desire, fear, and anger, and choose not to participate in them, not to walk through them, and to reason out if you think they're valuable in your life. And hopefully, I feel it's best for you to consider discarding your relationship with them. And by discarding it, I mean, slowly letting go. When you feel those limits come up, when you feel, fearful, just trying to expand your understanding of that aspect of yourself and not engaging in it. And slowly, step by step, you overcome those limits. And then, again, understanding that there's activities you can engage in that are beneficial to all people, for all walks of life, for all societies. Being, of course, tapas, purity, engaging in literally self-purification practices, whether that's physical or emotional or mental. Dana, which is, of course, charity and almsgiving, helping other people so you can overcome yourself, so you can be a channel of that compassion, of that uplifting element, so you can literally be just lifting up the world. And then obviously yagna, that selfless offering, giving up the greatest limit that anyone can have, which is their own domesticated, prideful, conditioned, individual egoic self, giving up all of that drama story to be something greater. So thank you so much, and I invite you to support this community, to share this with your friends, to believe in this mission, and to make your world a better place. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it so much.